Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. This edition of Dynamite was called Road Rager, and the build to the show was very good. And the show tonight, I loved it. I loved the show tonight. It was a awesome, great show. And we had good stuff take place on the show tonight. We had one surprise, which I will explain later on, which me and probably a lot of you didn't expect to see this happen early. So this was quite a shock to us fans. So I'll get to explain that later. But AEW is back on the road. They're touring again, which started tonight at Road Rager because they were in Miami. They were at the James L. Knight Center. It was awesome to hear a full crowd again, just cheering. You know, it was music to my ears. So you could tell that, everything is getting back to normal. But on the show tonight, we had a South Beach strap match, Cody Rhodes versus QT Marshall. We saw also the Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle. This was a trios match. And we also saw Andrade El Idolo, the AEW in-ring debut of Andrade El Idolo. And he ended up taking on Matt Sydal. We had mixed tag team action where it was Orange Cassidy and the Alien, Kris Statlander, versus the Bunny and the Blade. And in the main event, we saw the Young Bucks defend the AEW World Tag Team Championship against Eddie Kingston and Penta Meido in a street fight. But overall, Dynamite tonight, loved the show. It was a great show tonight. Awesome show. So let's jump right into the review. So Dynamite kicked off tonight with the South Beach strap match. Cody Rhodes versus QT Marshall. Cody Rhodes came out along with Arn Anderson. QT Marshall came out along with Aaron Solo and Nick Comoroto. And this was a very good match here. This was better than Elias versus Jackson Ryker when they had their strap match on Monday Night Raw. This beat that match. This was just very entertaining from Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall. And this was your old-fashioned South Beach strap match, or strap match, though. This was your old-fashioned strap match where you had to touch the four corners of the ring. So Cody Rhodes ended up starting off the match and delivered a suicide dive on QT Marshall. So Cody ended up landing some shots on QT Marshall, started choking Marshall with the strap. Marshall looked to go for the diamond cutter, but he ended up on the second rope. He ended up trying to go for a moonsault, but Cody ended up hitting him with the strap. Aaron Solo ended up getting involved. He ended up smacking Cody from behind as Cody ended up going to tap the third turnbuckle. And so Dustin Rhodes then came out. He ran out to the ring. He ended up tossing Aaron Solo into the front row. Nick Comoroto ended up chasing after Aaron Solo and Dustin as they went up into the crowd in the James L. Knight Center. So that led to QT Marshall delivering a low blow to Cody as Cody ended up looking on what was going on with Dustin and Aaron Solo and Nick Comoroto going up into the crowd. So QT Marshall ended up smacking the turnbuckles. He only got to smacking 3 of the other turnbuckles. So Cody was shown hitting each one of the turnbuckles. So they both end up getting to the last turnbuckle. Neither of them got to it. Neither Cody or QT got to it. QT Marshall then delivered a German suplex to Cody, and the two end up battling out on the floor. Cody then ended up yanking QT Marshall into the ring post, and when he got smacked into the ring post, QT Marshall was busted open. He was bleeding from that spot with the ring post. So Cody then ended up hitting two turnbuckles. And then the lights end up going out in the James L. Knight Center. JR on commentary said that there's a storm happening there, and there is a storm that's happening down in Florida. Hurricane Elsa is going to smack Florida. Prayers for the people in that path where Elsa is going to hit. Hope you all are safe. Will be safe down there. So prayers go out to everyone that's in the path of Elsa. So we had the lights end up going back on, and the crowd was chanting QT sucks as Cody ended up putting QT on the top turnbuckle. And QT Marshall ended up delivering a super power bomb to Cody. So QT Marshall ended up wrapping up Cody with the strap, ended up putting him on the top turnbuckle. QT Marshall then ended up hitting the diamond cutter to Cody. QT Marshall was able to hit 3 of the turnbuckles, and Cody ended up stopping QT from getting to the last turnbuckle. So Cody Rhodes landed the crossroads, and he hit the crossroads 3 times to QT Marshall. So when he hit the crossroads to QT 3 times, he ended up tapping all 4 of the turnbuckle pads, and there you go. Cody Rhodes ended up winning the match. Overall, this was a very good match, and it was your old-fashioned strap match with those rules where you got to tap each of the turnbuckle pads, the 4 of the turnbuckle pads around the ring. But we all knew that Cody was going to come out winning this strap match. But it was a lot better than Elias versus Jackson Ryker on Monday Night Raw, like 2 weeks ago. So, yeah, overall, very good match. So after the match, they end up cutting to the crowd, and we saw Dan Lambert, MMA trainer, and he was there along with UFC fighters Amanda Nunes and George Masvidal. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. So they were sitting in the crowd. And then we went to a video that was shot earlier in the day where Shawn Spears ended up saying that was quite possible the second best chair shot he's given in AEW, because they end up showing the footage from last week where Shawn Spears ended up hitting Sammy Guevara with the chair, which started Dynamite last week. So Spears ended up saying, that was quite possible the second best chair shot that he has given in AEW. So Shawn Spears ended up saying that Guevara's ego is what kept him back. So he ended up saying, I told you I would get you. So then we saw a chair ends up hitting Shawn Spears, and Sammy Guevara ended up sitting next to Shawn Spears. So Guevara ended up saying to Spears, I got you, bitch. This is far from over. So Sammy Guevara getting revenge on Shawn Spears after what Spears did last week to Guevara at the beginning of Dynamite from last week. So this is not over yet between Guevara and Shawn Spears. Then we had Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone was in the ring. He ended up introducing Kenny Omega, the AEW World Champion, and Don Callis. So Omega and Don Callis end up coming out. So Don Callis ended up getting Tony Schiavone off the mic, sent him into the corner. So Don Callis was doing the segment here. Don Callis ended up saying that it's time to give the crowd a history lesson about he and Omega have made history in pro wrestling. And Kenny Omega has made history in professional wrestling. You know, he's the AAA Mega Champion, he's the Impact Champion, and the AEW World Champion. Although I've read that there are plans for them to take the Impact title off of Kenny Omega. That's what I have read. But Kenny Omega, he is at his highest nowadays. He's at the peak of his career here, with him making history on having 3 titles. Like I said, the AAA Mega Championship, the Impact Championship, and the AEW World Championship. This is at his highest in his career. So we had a "You Got Fired" chant from the crowd to Don Callis because Don Callis ended up getting fired on an edition of Impact by Tommy Dreamer. So that's why the crowd was chanting, "You got fired." So Don Callis ended up responding. He ended up saying, "Real men don't quit. They get fired." So Don Callis was running down what Omega has done in the ring over the past couple of months. He ended up going on to say that there's nobody left for Kenny Omega to beat. So the crowd started chanting "cowboy shit." And you know who that is. So Callis ended up saying that creates a problem for the upcoming Fight for the Fallen show, because Kenny Omega has no challengers. So the Dark Order ended up coming out. Evil Uno was on the mic. Evil Uno ended up saying that he spent the last few minutes listening to Kenny Omega and his weird uncle talk. Of course, he was referring to Don Callis. Evil Uno ended up saying that he wants to know why they are ignoring the crowd and the #1 wrestler in AEW. So Omega ended up saying that Evil Uno seems like a smart guy. So Omega ended up asking Uno, what's the capital of Thailand? So he ends up low blowing Evil Uno. And then out came the Good Brothers, Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson. They end up attacking the Dark Order. Kenny Omega ended up sending Stu Grayson out to the floor. Omega ended up going to smack Evil Uno with the AEW World Championship. And then Hangman Adam Page ended up coming out. He got a big pop from the crowd. So he ran into the ring, started swinging on Gallows and Anderson. He ended up taking out Doc Gallows first. And then Carl Anderson when he took out Carl Anderson and Page went over the top rope. So then it was Omega still in the ring, and Page got in there. And he was looking to go for the buckshot lariat on Kenny Omega. So Page and Kenny Omega end up joining in the center of the ring. Page ended up clocking Carl Anderson, getting up on the apron. And Kenny Omega ended up running out of the ring. He ran off to the stage. And that was that. But this is a whole setup for Hangman and Page versus Kenny Omega, which we will get at All Out. I think at All Out we'll be seeing Hangman and Page versus Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. And the build for Page and Omega going into All Out. It's going to be a good one. And it's going to be a great match when it happens with them. Then we had Jim Ross. Good old JR. He ended up sitting down with Ethan Page and Darby Allin. Jim Ross ended up saying that he finds it uneasy that they keep talking about ending each other's career. Ethan Page and Darby Allin. Page ended up saying that maybe Darby Allin deserves not having a career any longer. So Jim Ross was like to Page, oh, how is that? How that is? Because he was wondering, how that is, with Darby Allin deserving not having a career any longer. So Darby Allin ended up saying that it took him only 1 year to get to a point where it took Ethan Page 12 years. Darby Allin ended up saying that he dropped everything to get to AEW, and that he even went homeless in his car. He went on to say that Page was complacent. He got married, and he didn't leave his hometown. Page ended up saying that if it wasn't for him, Darby Allin would still be in the gutter. So Page goes to Darby Allin. He ended up saying, I brought you in and up in professional wrestling. So Ethan Page ended up confirming that the coffin match will take place next week on Dynamite. So we're going to be having this coffin match, even though Page ended up calling it off last week. But we're going to be getting the coffin match. So it's going to be a good match between Page and Darby Allin next week in that coffin match. Can't wait to see how that's going to go. And then we had the trios match. Santana, Ortiz, and Jake Hager versus FTR and Wardlow. Conan was out there with Santana, Ortiz, and Jake Hager. Tully Blanchard, of course, was there with FTR and Wardlow. And this was an enjoyable match here. The match started off with Ortiz working on Dax Harwood. Dax Harwood ended up coming back. He started delivering some chops to Ortiz. Dax ended up tagging in Cash Wheeler. Wheeler came in. He ended up dropping Ortiz. He went for the cover, which Ortiz ended up kicking out too. Cash ended up tagging in Wardlow. Wardlow came in, delivered a gut wrench powerbomb to Ortiz. So Dax ended up getting back into the ring. Ortiz was working his way back into the match, delivered a Liger bomb to Dax Harwood. Hager ended up coming in, delivered the Vader bomb on Cash Wheeler, and he then cleared out the ring. But at the end of the match, we had Hager trying to go for a ankle lock on Wardlow, but Tully Blanchard caused a distraction, and FTR ended up hitting the big rig on Jake Hager. Wardlow went for the cover. So there you go. FTR and Wardlow ended up winning the match, thanks to distraction by Tully Blanchard. Post-match, Conan ended up getting into the ring. He ended up hitting Wardlow with a loaded sock, and when he hit Wardlow with the loaded sock, it did nothing to Wardlow. So Tully Blanchard then ended up chop blocking Conan from behind, and that was that. That was it. But overall, this was a decent match. This was a decent trios match. And then we went backstage and we saw the Good Brothers. They ended up saying that they have a big problem with Jon Moxley. Carl Anderson ended up saying how Moxley having the IWGP United States Championship, and it makes him sick. He ended up saying that he wants to know if Moxley is ready to defend the IWGP United States Championship next week at Fyter Fest. So there's that. So we're going to get that match next week at Fyter Fest. Fyter Fest is going to be taking place 2 nights. Next week will be night 1 of Fyter Fest. The following week will be night 2. So it's going to be a good show next week. But I did see that video where Moxley shaved his head and he's now bald. And also with Moxley, congrats to him and Renee on having their first baby. They have a baby girl, which their baby girl's name is Nora. So congrats to the both of them and on having this beautiful baby girl. So really happy for them. And then we had MJF. MJF ended up heading out to the ring to give his stipulations to Chris Jericho. So he came out first, and then Jericho came out. And I don't know if you spotted it after Jericho made his way into the ring, but a stupid fan came into the ring to try to attack MJF. So Jericho ended up coming to this fan, ended up knocking him out of the ring, and the camera ended up cutting to the crowd. So MJF was like, "Oh, if any one of you stupid people run in here, I will knock you out." So that was what happened. A stupid fan jumped over the barricade, came to the ring, and got his ass handed by Jericho for the fan trying to attack MJF. But there was a table that was in the ring. There was a contract on the table for them to sign. So MJF ended up telling Jericho that he's already beaten him twice and that he's here groveling and begging for another match. And that's freaking sad. He kept saying that he doesn't blame him because everybody wants a piece of the king of All Elite Wrestling. So Jericho ended up saying that he should have let that fast bastard that tried to jump the barricade in the ring to beat MJF's ass, which the crowd really enjoyed when Jericho said that because they were like, "Oh." But Jericho ended up saying that he's him and that he'll accept any stipulation up to and including sex with MJF's mom, which I thought that was hilarious. So we end up having MJF end up saying that he doesn't care what the fans want. And that it's a shame we got to this point. And MJF ended up saying that he looked up. He used to look up to Jericho. He ended up saying that one of his favorite parts of Jericho's career was his rivalry against Moxley. And he was like, "Oh, do you remember what you put Moxley through to get that match?" He ended up saying that he made him wrestle every member. He made Moxley wrestle every member of the Inner Circle. And he ended up saying karma sucks. And that he's taken that blueprint and making it better. So Jericho ended up saying that if he can't get through these labors, maybe he doesn't deserve to be in AEW, and that he'll accept them because he's the god of war and thunder, and he's going to beat him and ruin his life. He's going to beat MJF and also ruin his life. So Jericho then signed the contract. He threw it at MJF. So MJF ended up telling Jericho, no, that's not how we do it. You know, I'm from Long Island, and the deal is not done until we both shake hands. So MJF ended up extending his hand, and he ended up demanding and forcing Jericho to shake his hand. So Jericho then shook MJF's hand, and Jericho didn't let go of MJF's hand. And then Jericho ended up laying the Judas effect to MJF, which MJF was knocked out. And that was how the segment ended. But this was a very enjoyable segment. and sets up more of Jericho and MJF's feud together. Just a very good segment this was. But that stupid fan jumping into the ring trying to attack MJF, I don't know why that fan did it. Maybe he's not a real fan of AEW. Maybe he's more of a fan of WWE. Probably was a WWE fan that attacked MJF. That tried to attack MJF, and Jericho ended up, laying him out. So, who knows? But that fan was stupid to do that. So then we had Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone was backstage and he was interviewing Britt Baker, the AEW Women's World Champion, and Rebel. Britt Baker ended up saying that she wasn't happy about being forced to wrestle in last week's tag team match, which that match was god-awful, by the way. I mean, having Vicky Guerrero in the ring and Rebel. Vicky Guerrero, she needs to stay out of the ring. She can't wrestle. Rebel is another one who can't wrestle. She practically injured herself just doing a move. So, Rebel had a crutch because she injured herself last week. So, Britt Baker ended up blaming Tony Khan for putting them in that situation. Britt Baker ended up saying that this was all because Vicky Guerrero bought in Andrade El Idolo, and she hopes that Tony Khan enjoys his blood money. So she referenced maybe Dynamite can run in Saudi Arabia next week. Of course, Britt Baker taking shots at WWE with WWE and their Saudi deal. So good job on Britt Baker for referencing that. Taking shots at WWE. So she ended up calling Nyla Rose soft. And she ended up telling Nyla Rose that she will never get this title again. She will never get the AEW Women's World Championship ever again. Because it's going to be staying on Britt Baker. So that was the segment with Britt Baker. So good on her on referencing the Saudi Arabia thing, making fun of WWE and their awful Saudi Arabia shows whenever they go out there. We all know how WWE's Saudi Arabia shows are. They're absolutely awful. And then we had the AEW in-ring debut of Andrade El Idolo. So he came out along with Vicky Guerrero and he faced Matt Sydal, which this was a good match. This proves right here that Andrade is going to have a big push in AEW. And I can't wait for it to happen. Give him more, big matches and more of a push. And they're going to treat him a lot better than what WWE failed to do when they had him. So Andrade had a assistant with him along with Vicky Guerrero. So Andrade ended up starting the match off. He ended up putting down Matt Sydal. Andrade then headed up to the top. He ended up going for a moonsault, a nice moonsault. Sydal ended up moving, and Andrade ended up hitting a second moonsault on Matt Sydal. Went for the cover, which Sydal ended up kicking out at 2. Sydal ended up sweeping Andrade's leg, ends up hitting a standing moonsault of his own. So Andrade was looking to go for a knee to Matt Sydal in the corner, but Sydal ended up moving out of the way. Sydal came back and delivered a leg lariat to Andrade. And the two of them were just, trading kicks. And at the end of the match, Andrade ended up hitting the double knees to Matt Sydal in the corner. And the El Idolo which is his finisher now. It's not the Hammerlock DDT, it's the Hammerlock DDT, but they're now calling it El Idolo. So he hit the El Idolo to Matt Sydal. He went for the cover. There you go. Andrade picks up his first win in AEW. So post-match, Andrade ended up being on Matt Sydal a lot more. And that was that. But overall, this was a good match, and I was really happy to see Andrade back in the ring. You know, even though it's an AEW ring, his in-ring debut on AEW, it was good seeing him back in the ring. And could already know that they're setting him up to give him a big push. They see something on Andrade that WWE did not see and failed to do when he was there. So things are looking good for Andrade. And then we had a promo between Matt Hardy and Christian Cage. Matt Hardy ended up saying that every time he does something, Christian isn't far behind. He ended up saying that they had an agreement in the Double or Nothing Battle Royale, but Christian broke that promise. So Matt Hardy then ended up announcing next week on Dynamite at Fyter Fest, it will be Matt Hardy versus Christian Cage. So Christian ended up saying that he accepts, and to either get on his level or get out of the way. So that match is going to be taking place next week. It's going to be a very good match between Matt Hardy and Christian. Can't wait to see it. And both of those guys are going to deliver. And so now here's where we get to the segment where us fans did not know that this was going to happen so early. This segment was very exciting here. So Tony Schiavone was in the ring with Arn Anderson. And Arn Anderson was running down some things that are happening in his life with Cody and his son Brock. So Arn ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying that it's great to be in Miami. So the lights end up going out again. And we all thought this could be a part of the weather. But then the lights go back on. And we see Tommy End, Malachi Black, formerly known as Aleister Black. He was in the ring. And the crowd went nuts. And when he showed up in the ring, and when I saw him in the ring, I was like, what? Because we all didn't expect Black to be in AEW this early. I mean, I knew he was going to go to AEW, but we all weren't expecting him to be in AEW this early. So Black was in the ring. He ended up delivering the Black Mask to Arn Anderson. Cody then ran to the ring. He had a standoff against Black. So Black then delivered the Black Mask to Cody. So he ended up staring at both Arn Anderson and Cody as they were both down. And Black ended up making his way to the back. So he is now being called Malachi Black. But this was very exciting. I went nuts when I saw him in the ring. Because, like I said, we all weren't expecting Black to debut this early. So, I mean, we all knew that he was going to AEW. But him showing up this early was a surprise. I thought he was still under a 90-day no-compete clause with WWE. But this makes Zelina Vega re-signing with WWE a lot worse. Because she should have went to AEW and manage her husband here. Imagine if Zelina Vega was there, outside the ring, with Black inside, attacking Arn Anderson and Cody, and Zelina Vega, and I'm saying, AEW is going to get a whole lot great with Malakai Black. He is unstoppable. He will be an unstoppable force. Could you imagine if Zelina Vega said something on the lines of that, or something different, if she signed with AEW and manages her husband right there? Could have been great. But no, she had to be a sellout and re-sign with WWE. All we could say is, Zelina Vega, good luck in your future endeavors, whenever that comes up. Because we all know she will be buried. She lost the match last week to Liv Morgan. So, she should have just went to AEW. But, really happy to see Black in AEW, Malakai Black in AEW, Tommy End. And WWE, Vince McMahon, they're probably crying right now because they so wanted to get Black back in WWE because, we re-signed Zelina Vega when Black, we released him. So yeah, we release Aleister Black, but let's bring back his wife. So when Aleister Black was like, no, I'm not returning to WWE. So, there you go. Debuted tonight on Dynamite, and it was a awesome moment. So then we have Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks ended up talking some trash in the ring before his matchup against Brian Cage, which we're going to see next week on Dynamite Fighter Fest, Night 1. So Team Taz ended up coming out to tell Ricky Starks to chill out. Starks ended up saying that he's going to win the FTW Championship and party like an FTW champion should. And maybe he will do it with Cage's wife. And of course, Brian Cage's wife is Melissa Santos. She used to do the ring announcement for Lucha Underground. So it brought out Cage to the ring. Ricky Starks ended up bailing. And I think this was all during AEW Dark. So Starks ended up bailing out of the ring. And that was that. So, but we're going to be getting that next week on Dynamite. It's going to be Ricky Starks versus Brian Cage for the FTW Championship. And then we had the Blade and the Bunny versus Orange Cassidy and Kris Statlander, the Alien. So this was a decent match here. This was a decent mixed tag team match. Orange Cassidy was in the ring with the Bunny. So the Bunny ended up going to take a swing. Cassidy ended up landing his kicks to the Bunny. The little kicks where the crowd goes, oh, oh, oh. So the Bunny ended up tagging out the Blade before before Orange Cassidy could finish the kicks. So Blade ended up looking to clock Orange Cassidy, but Orange Cassidy ended up delivering a drop kick to the Blade. Cassidy ended up trying for a counter DDT, but Blade ended up blocking it and ended up delivering a power slam to Orange Cassidy. And before the match, Aubrey Edwards was checking the Blade for like weapons like brass knucks, which the Blade did have a set of brass knucks. So Kris Statlander and the Bunny end up coming in. Kris Statlander ended up overpowering the Bunny. She was delivering chops in the corner. Statlander delivered a delayed vertical suplex to the Bunny. So Statlander was able to hit a Blue Thunder Bomb to the Bunny, which she went for the cover. The Bunny ended up kicking out at 2. So Orange Cassidy and the Blade end up coming back in. Cassidy ended up flying over the top rope and nailed a DDT to the Blade. Went for the cover, which the Blade ended up kicking out too. And you had Kris Statlander later on in the match. She ended up delivering a 450 splash to the Blade. Orange Cassidy went for the cover, but the Bunny ended up pulling Cassidy out of the ring. So the Blade ended up having another set of brass knucks. Orange Cassidy was in the ring. He tried to go for the orange punch, but the Blade ended up knocking Orange Cassidy out with the brass knucks. Statlander then made the tag while the Blade was over in his corner with the Bunny. So Statlander shoved the Bunny into the Blade, which knocked the Blade out of the ring. So that led to Kris Statlander delivering the Big Bang Theory to the Bunny. She went for the cover. There you go. Orange Cassidy and Kris Statlander ended up winning the match. Overall, decent match. Decent mixed tag team match. And then we saw Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone was in the crowd with Dan Lambert, Amanda Nunes, and George Masvidal. So Lambert ended up getting on the mic. He ended up introducing Nunes and Masvidal. So Lambert then ended up crossing the barricade. He got into the ring. He ended up saying that he was once skeptical of coming, and it's because AEW sucks. He ended up saying that if he wanted to watch some real wrestling, he'd pop in some of the wrestling from the 70s and the 80s and watch them tear up the ring. He mentions Harley Race, and all the others of that era. So he ended up saying that he thinks wrestling has gone down since the late 90s. Wrestling hasn't gone down in the late 90s. The Attitude Era was one of the best eras in professional wrestling. If you want to talk about it going downhill, watch WWE now. So he ended up saying that AEW was unwatchable. I could clearly tell that Dan Lambert loves watching WWE shit. He loves what he sees on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown. If he thinks AEW is unwatchable. Guess we could call Dan Lambert a WWE shill. If he thinks AEW is unwatchable. He ended up saying that Tony Khan told him wrestling is doing the right way. And they have a mix of everything. He ended up saying that he should have trusted his instincts, though. And before he can talk any more trash. So then Lance Archer then ended up running out. He ended up punching Lambert. He then ended up delivering the blackout on Lambert. And that was that. But overall, this was just a very random segment with Dan Lambert coming in there and going, "Oh, AEW sucks. All right, watch some real wrestling from the 70s and 80s. AEW is unwatchable." AEW is unwatchable. If you want to see something that's unwatchable, go. There's a show on Monday night. It's not AEW. It's a show on Monday night. It's from WWE. It's called Monday Night Raw. Go watch that and say, "Oh, AEW is unwatchable." That show, Monday Night Raw, is unwatchable every single week. So that was that. And then then they announced the matches that we're going to see next week for Fyter Fest Night 1. So it's going to be Brian Cage versus Ricky Starks for the FTW Championship. The coffin match between Ethan Page and Darby Allin. Matt Hardy versus Christian Cage. All three of those matches are going to deliver. It's going to be a good match. Good matches from them. We're going to have Penelope Ford versus Yuka Sakazaki making her return. Hangman Page is going to speak probably about Omega. And the IWGP United States Championship is going to be on the line. Moxley versus Carl Anderson. So, Fyter Fest Night 1 is shaping up to be good. Main event. The Young Bucks versus Eddie Kingston and Penta Miedo. This was a street fight for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Very good main event. Very enjoyable match here. And the Bucks end up barely getting through their entrance. And Eddie Kingston and Penta Miedo attack them. They end up beating the Young Bucks up on the outside. And they end up taking out Brandon Cutler in the corner of the ring. So Matt and Nick end up running back to the ring. Nick had a chair. He ended up taking down Penta and Eddie Kingston. Kingston ended up getting a hold of the chair. He ended up holding it by Nick as Penta ended up hitting the drop kick off the top rope into the chair, which hit Nick. Penta then ended up setting a table out on the floor. So Penta ended up hitting a Wild Canadian Destroyer through the table to Matt Jackson. So Penta then got a trash can. Nick ended up booting Penta in his face. Nick ended up having a trash can on Eddie Kingston, ended up hitting the senton off the top rope. Penta then ended up nailing the sling blade on both Matt and Nick. So they end up double teaming. Matt and Nick end up double teaming on Eddie Kingston. They were looking for, the more bang for your buck. But Penta ended up breaking that up. So there was a point in the match where Frankie Kazarian ended up showing up there. Because Frankie Kazarian ended up powerbombing Brandon Cutler through the table on the floor. Because the Good Brothers end up coming out, and Penta ended up hitting a flip out on the floor to the Good Brothers. So Matt Jackson then ended up hitting a spear on Kingston, and Cutler ended up going for the cold spray, and that's when Frankie Kazarian came out and put Cutler through the table with the powerbomb. So there's a point where thumbtacks were used, because Kingston ended up grabbing the bag that Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson ended up bringing out, and the bag had thumbtacks in it. So Matt Jackson ended up grabbing a bunch of thumbtacks, and he threw the thumbtacks into Kingston's face, which was crazy. So Penta ended up clocking Matt with a trash can. Nick and Penta end up battling it up on the top turnbuckle. And Nick Jackson ended up hitting the Hurricanrana on Penta, which sent Penta into the thumbtacks. So Nick went for the cover, which Penta ended up kicking out at 2. And then Kingston ended up pushing the whole pile to break it up. So Nick then threw thumbtacks at Penta, which sent him out to the floor. And what was crazy was, after Nick threw the thumbtacks at Penta, he then ended up putting thumbtacks into Eddie Kingston's mouth. And with that, Matt Jackson ended up delivering a super kick to Kingston, went for the cover, and there you go. The Bucks end up winning the match, retaining the AEW World Tag Team Championship. And that was how Dynamite went off the air tonight. But overall, this was a good main event. It was very enjoyable. It was extreme. Them tossing thumbtacks at Eddie Kingston and putting it into his mouth. I'd never seen that before. But this was an awesome match. But we all knew that the Bucks were going to retain the titles. The Bucks aren't losing the titles anytime soon. They're going to have a long, lengthy run with the titles. Overall, Dynamite tonight, loved it. It was an awesome show. And the in-ring debut of Andrade was awesome. And the surprising debut of Malachi Black. I think that was a awesome moment. And something that, like I said, we all weren't expecting this early. But anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, And I will see you all on Friday, which there will be 2 videos coming on Friday, which will be the Black Widow review, which I'm going to be seeing Black Widow on Friday. So there will be a review of that. And also the SmackDown review later on in the night on Friday after the show. So be on the lookout for those 2 videos. So until then, see you all Friday with the review of Black Widow. So that will be the next video. So see you all Friday.